the dashboard was wrong. Sales blamed ops blamed IT, and marketing down the hall, they have a completely different number. That is data fragmentation. Nobody knows who to trust, which one's right, or what business rules are being applied to any of them. So here's how it starts, and in the next 5 minutes, you're gonna hear from Lindsay and I on what to do before it buries your business. That data fragmentation that you talk about happens with with everybody.
Yeah.
I see it. I see it in enterprises. I see it in SMBs, and you're seeing it with nonprofit. Hey, I'd love to hear what your take is on how and why that happens.
I think it happens for a lot of reasons. I think, well, two big ones are that organizations tend to choose software and tools based on the immediate problem that is in front of them that we need to fix, and what can we do on the cheap.
Yeah.
So one example sort of might be the communications department needs a different system for managing all of their email addresses. So they kind of go off and look at some tools and make decisions about what they want to use, only to later find out that, oh, we actually needed to talk to the fundraising database that we spent $1 million on 5 years ago, but we don't actually know how to do that. So, well, it was cheap, or it's what we've got for now. We don't have time to kind of look into something different. And that is sort of the silos between departments sometimes can contribute to the silos with the data. If every little team is doing their own thing and there's no cohesive strategy, that's where things can get really messy, especially as an organization grows.
Yeah, and I'll say, I just want to talk about this from the enterprise, perspective from the enterprise standpoint. It's actually very different as to why I see it happen. I think from an enterprise standpoint, as they purchase other companies, as they integrate other companies into their business, they're integrating those other tools that oftentimes these are SMBs or they're mid-market that are being purchased by some conglomerate like AT&T or T-Mobile, or we see the Salesforce and Informatica integration this past couple weeks, and then they have to figure out how to integrate those tools that those companies have purchased, a lot of them off the shelf, but also a lot of them some homegrown applications, right? You see it's these homegrown applications, and then you have to either get them to transition off those applications, or you have to figure out how to integrate those applications. And I saw that with when AT&T purchased Alien Vault. They were on AWS, we were on Azure, and we had to one of my big projects was migrating that AWS account into Azure, into AT&T's Azure account. And so I think that it's different with enterprises. But I think it's probably similar with mid-market and SMBs, where they're doing what they can to get by, to move forward, and they integrate these tools and resources. Sometimes a lot of those don't have a data person, and so they don't have that knowledge and that background to understand, oh, I need this tool to be able to talk to this tool. And how are we going to get all of this to talk to each other? So
when you mentioned sort of homegrown apps, it made me think. I was doing some reading, academic reading, like the nerd that is sitting before you, about sort of challenges nonprofits face with data. And one term that gets thrown around every once in a while is the homebrew database. Meaning, yes, okay, so we have some things in spreadsheets, and then we maybe have one database that we use for something. Also, there are paper files in the storage room that haven't been looked at in 5 years, but should be a part of the overall system. So the data fragmentation can come down to things like paper files that just haven't been put into an electronic system.
Yeah. I worked with a chiropractor, a small, just local chiropractor, and like that was what I did for him. Was I did a lot of data entry. I built a custom system for his business, and he sat me in a room, and I had a stack of files beside me from the floor, probably 3 feet up. Of
Jeez.
okay, I need you to start putting these into the system, and this was. Lord, this was probably 17 years ago, so we didn't have a lot of the tools that we have now.
Yeah.
Where now you could probably scan all those in and load them into a file, and even like more recently in the last couple of years, probably use AI to just read those files and put them into like a CSV that you could easily load somewhere. And then even like today, you have in enterprises that stray marketing team that's been using an MS Access database for 10 years to do that.
Not Access.
And enterprises still run into that. I'm sure that you probably see that in nonprofit too, because MS Access is something people are like, oh, hey, this is cool. I could use this for my database.
Yeah,
right.
It's there.
It's there. And then they hit 1 million rows and they're like, why is this not working anymore? So Lindsay and I have dealt with this several times over the years in various different environments, and I'm going to tell you now, how do you fix these types of situations? So number one, identify all the different artifacts that you have out there. Excel files, MS Access databases, all these various sources of truth that people have been using for years and even decades. And you're going to have to take an inventory of all those different situations. You're going to have to potentially sit down with each of the people that actually use those tools, understand how they're using them, what is involved with cleaning that data, what's involved with any manual processes to load that data into those tools, into that MS Access database, into that Excel file. Is it copy and paste? Is it some type of export and it's reading via Power Query? What situations? These are reasons why you need to know as a data engineer how to use these things in Excel and in MS Access and other tools out there, how to use SharePoint lists, things like that, so that you can ultimately take those fundamental tools that people have been using and upgrade them into a production ready data environment. So number one, take inventory of all the different sources of truth that the business has been using for years and maybe even decades. And then from there, document out all the different things that are going into creating those tools, all the different exports and imports, all the different copy and pasting that people may be doing, all the different data cleaning that people may be doing, keeping in mind that that's not what they're calling it. They're calling it things like, well, I changed this to that. If you ask them what data cleaning they're doing, they're not going to give you an answer. They'll be like, oh, nothing. And so ultimately, sometimes you're going to have to sit down with those people and watch their process, because they might not always understand your nomenclature. You may have a little bit of a communication gap. Make sure that you're taking that time to thoroughly examine those artifacts, to thoroughly document the process now, so that you can accurately and completely transition it into that production level ready environment. And so in those situations, you're going to come across multiple business rules, right? Sales may have one business rule, marketing may have a different one, and you're going to have to reconcile all those, or ultimately provide different views for each one. And that's okay. Sometimes that happens in business. Sometimes it happens that marketing needs one view to look at something a specific way, and while sales needs a different view. As long as you have and are able to communicate why those views are different and why those numbers are going to be different, then that's okay. That happens. Ultimately, your upper level management is going to need a completely different view anyways. And so you're going to have to create a different view so that they could get at the answers that they need to make the decisions that they need to make to answer their business decisions. Which just comes to an important point here. When you're doing this, when you're taking inventory, when you are sitting down and having these conversations with people, make sure that you're asking them, what business question is this answering? What business problem is this fixing? And get those answers, document those answers, because that will help you as you're moving it to production environment. Let me know down in the comments, what has been your biggest issue with data fragmentation that you've seen over the years? And how did you handle it?